all assumed the returned Christmas present was the final blow, the moment where everything finally settled. But now it's painfully clear that was only the beginning. What's emerging next is far more damaging, far more personal, and far more impossible to explain away. Whispers are spreading about a private audio clip, allegedly recorded on Truly's own phone during a visitation weekend, a moment no one expected to be preserved. And according to those close to the situation, this single recording doesn't just undermine Kody Brown's carefully rehearsed victim act, it completely demolishes it. This isn't about a father being busy. This isn't about distance, weather, schedules, or miscommunication. What this audio allegedly exposes is something much colder. It suggests that the story Kody has been telling for years, to the cameras, to the audience, and even to his own children, was never real to begin with. It paints a picture not of a man desperately trying to see his daughter, but of someone inventing reasons not to. For a long time, viewers have watched the slow collapse of Kody's relationship with his kids, a painful unraveling that felt messy, emotional, and tragic. But nothing prepares you for what insiders are calling the moment everything clicks into place. This isn't a misunderstanding that can be blamed on editing. It's not a bad day caught on camera. It's the exposure of a deliberately constructed narrative designed to protect one man's ego while leaving his youngest child emotionally stranded. Because the truth is, the quietest Brown child may have just done the loudest thing anyone in that family has ever done. The story Kody has sold for years is familiar. He claims logistics are the enemy. He blames travel, snowstorms, rules, obligations, work pressures. Season after season, he looks straight into the lens with a wounded expression, insisting he's the one being shut out, the one suffering. He repeats the same line until it sounds believable, that the phone works both ways, subtly shifting responsibility onto a child barely old enough to process abandonment, let alone manage a fractured relationship with her father. But when Truly moved to Utah with Christine, something changed. She started watching instead of waiting. She saw what it looked like when an adult actually made time. She saw David Woolley show up without excuses, without conditions, without turning presence into a performance. And slowly, the story Kody had been telling stopped matching the reality unfolding right in front of her. According to those familiar with the alleged recording, that disconnect is exactly what gets exposed. During a recent visit, Truly is said to have overheard a conversation between Kody and Robin, a conversation Kody never expected his daughter to hear, let alone document. The discussion reportedly centers on the very dates Kody claimed he was unavailable to attend her school events, dates he said were blocked by work commitments, dates he insisted were unavoidable. But if the audio exists as described, those dates weren't business trips at all. The claims suggest Kody openly admits those absences lined up with shopping trips in Scottsdale and so-called mental health breaks for Robin. Time that was supposedly untouchable suddenly looks optional. Work, it seems, wasn't work. It was a cover story, and Truly wasn't excluded because of necessity. She simply wasn't invited. Imagine what that does to a teenager, sitting quietly in a house where you already feel like a visitor, hearing your parent casually confirm that the reason they missed your milestones wasn't responsibility but preference, that the burden wasn't providing for you but choosing comfort over connection. Truly wasn't just scrolling on her phone, she was listening, and she was learning. This is where everything flips. She stops being the child affected by his schedule and becomes the one auditing it. For years, Kody's defense has relied on one central idea, that he's a man crushed under responsibility, a businessman stretched too thin, constantly traveling, endlessly managing obligations too big for anyone else to understand. He tells himself and the world that if he's working, he's doing his duty, that providing excuses him from presence, that effort can replace attendance. That logic might work on viewers. It may even work inside his own household, but it stopped working on his children a long time ago. If the reports about this audio are accurate, the illusion finally collapses. The conversation allegedly reveals Cody laughing about missed events, joking about avoiding uncomfortable encounters, and expressing relief rather than regret. Relief that he didn't have to see Christine happy. Relief that he didn't have to stand in the same room as the man who stepped in where he stepped out. That laugh matters because it changes everything. It wasn't that he couldn't be there, it's that he didn't want to be. The emotional impact of that realization can't be overstated. Truly has grown up in the background of chaos, often quiet, often overlooked, always observing. She lived through the divorce, the public breakdowns, the tearful speeches that somehow always centered Cody's pain above everyone else's. She left Flagstaff and built a new normal in Utah, one where consistency replaced excuses. And then she returned, not as a little girl hoping for attention, but as a teenager who understands patterns. Cody didn't account for that evolution. He still treats his children like props in a story he's directing, forgetting that they have their own perspectives, their own memories, and now their own evidence. The alleged recording exists because he assumed she wasn't paying attention, because he believed his narrative was airtight, because he underestimated the one person who had the most reason to question it. What makes this moment so devastating isn't just the lie, it's what the lie represents. Cody has spent years blaming Christine for creating distance, framing himself as a father fighting for access against a bitter ex. But if this recording says what insiders claim it does, it proves the distance was never geographical, it was emotional. He had the time, he had the resources, he had the opportunity, he just chose not to use them. And worse, he chose to rewrite that choice as victimhood. There are rumors that the audio captures him mocking the idea of running into David, admitting he skipped key moments simply to avoid that discomfort, that he laughed about it, that he treated his daughter's milestones as inconveniences rather than memories. If true, that isn't just neglect, that's contempt. And once that truth exists, it can't be unseen. The power shift here is enormous. Cody has always relied on ambiguity, on conflicting stories, on plausible deniability. He could claim miscommunication, he could blame editing, he could accuse others of exaggeration. But an audio doesn't argue back. It doesn't forget, it doesn't reinterpret itself. You can't gaslight audio. That's why the reported legal panic matters, because an innocent man doesn't rush to silence his child. He doesn't explore lawsuits to suppress his own voice. Fear doesn't come from misunderstanding, it comes from recognition. If this audio ever surfaces publicly, it doesn't just confirm what critics have suspected. It validates everything Christine has said. It reinforces why Janelle walked away. It explains why the older kids stopped trying. It reframes years of confusion into a single brutal clarity. Truly didn't create the truth, she captured it. And that's why this moment feels different from every other scandal that surrounded this family. This isn't adult drama. This isn't ex-wife conflict. This is a child realizing her father's love came with conditions, performances, and excuses, and deciding she was done pretending otherwise. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm out. She didn't confront him on camera. She pressed record. Now, the question isn't whether Cody's narrative survives, it's whether he ever deserved it in the first place. Do you think Truly should release the audio and let the truth speak for itself, or keep it as protection in a world where she's already learned words can be twisted?
Everyone thought the drama peaked when that Christmas gift was sent back. It felt final, like the last chapter had already been written. But what's coming out now makes that moment look small, because behind the scenes, something far more damaging was allegedly captured. A private audio clip recorded during a visitation weekend, a moment no one expected to be exposed. And according to people close to the situation, this recording doesn't just poke holes in Kody Brown's version of events, it tears it apart completely. This isn't another case of crossed wires or reality TV manipulation. What's being whispered about goes far deeper than editing tricks or misunderstood intentions. The claims suggest that Kody's long-standing excuse that work, distance, and endless responsibilities kept him from his daughter may have been nothing more than a carefully maintained illusion. Not a man blocked from seeing his child, but a man actively choosing not to. For years, viewers have watched Kody's relationship with his children slowly deteriorate, each season more uncomfortable than the last. It's been messy, emotional, and painful to witness. But insiders say this alleged audio changes the entire context. This isn't chaos born from confusion, it's control, a deliberate narrative built to protect one person's pride while quietly sidelining a child who just wanted her dad to show up. Because the most shocking part isn't the recording itself, it's who made it. The child who rarely spoke up, who stayed in the background while adults fought and blamed each other, may have been paying closer attention than anyone realized. While the adults argued in front of cameras, she was listening off camera. And if the rumors are true, she caught a version of Kody the audience was never meant to hear. Kody has spent years explaining his absence with the same script. He says work comes first. He blames travel, weather, rules, pressure. He looks straight into the camera and insists he's the one being pushed away, the one suffering. He even suggests that communication is a shared responsibility, quietly placing the emotional weight of the relationship onto a child. But when Truly moved to Utah, something shifted. She stopped waiting for excuses and started noticing patterns. She watched another adult step in without complaints, without schedules, without making love feel conditional. And slowly, the story Kody kept telling stopped matching the reality she was living. That's where this alleged recording comes in. During a visit back in Flagstaff, Truly is said to have overheard a conversation she was never meant to hear, a casual exchange between Kody and Robin that stripped away the public narrative entirely. The dates Kody claimed were blocked by work, the ones he said made it impossible to attend her school events, reportedly weren't about work at all. According to the claims, those days lined up with personal trips, shopping sprees, and time carved out for Robin's comfort. Time that existed, time that was available, just not for her. And in that moment, everything changed. She wasn't just the child affected by his absence anymore. She became the one who understood it. For a long time, Kody's favorite defense has been the image of the overworked provider. He presents himself as a man stretched impossibly thin, constantly traveling, constantly juggling responsibilities too heavy for anyone else to carry. In his mind, being busy equals being blameless. If he's working, then he's doing his duty, and if he's doing his duty, then no one has the right to question his absence. That explanation might satisfy an audience watching from a distance. It may even comfort the household that benefits from his presence. But it stopped convincing his children long ago, especially one who had already begun comparing words with actions. According to the whispers surrounding this recording, the mask slips completely. The conversation allegedly reveals that the missed moments weren't sacrifices made for the family, but decisions made for convenience. Instead of regret, there's relief. Instead of sadness, there's humor. The tone, insiders say, isn't of a father disappointed he couldn't be there, but of a man pleased he avoided something uncomfortable. And that detail matters more than anything, because it wasn't that he lacked time, it was that he lacked willingness. There are claims that the audio includes laughter about dodging school events and avoiding awkward run-ins, that he openly admits he didn't want to face Christine's new life or stand in the same space as the man who stepped into a role he abandoned. If true, it exposes something far uglier than neglect. It reveals fear, pride, and resentment taking priority over a child's need for connection. For a teenager hearing this, the impact is devastating. Truly has spent much of her life on the edges of family chaos, often quiet, often overlooked, but never unaware. She lived through the divorce, the emotional speeches, the public breakdowns that somehow always centered on Kody's pain. She adjusted to a new life in Utah, where consistency replaced excuses and presence didn't require performance. So when she returned to Flagstaff, she didn't arrive as a little girl hoping to be noticed. She came back as someone who had already learned to recognize patterns. What Kody failed to understand is that his children are no longer characters he can control with a storyline. They've grown up. They remember, they connect dots, and they carry technology that preserves truth, not spin. The alleged recording exists because Cody assumed safety. He believed his narrative was secure, his version unquestioned. He didn't consider that the quiet child in the room was listening closely, or that she had reached the age where trust is no longer automatic. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifted. Truly was no longer waiting for his schedule to make space for her. She was finally seeing it for what it was.
The most damaging part of this situation isn't just what was said, but what it proves. For years, Cody has insisted that the distance between him and Truly was forced on him. He has blamed geography, circumstances, and other people, especially Christine, portraying himself as a father desperate for access but constantly blocked. That story only works if there was never a real choice. But if this recording exists in the way insiders describe, it shows that the choice was always there. The separation wasn't created by miles on a map, it was created by emotional detachment. He had the ability to show up, he had the means to be present, and yet, again and again, he decided not to. Worse still, he wrapped that decision in excuses designed to make himself look noble rather than negligent. That's where the narrative completely collapses. The rumors suggest the audio captures a version of Cody that viewers never see, relaxed, amused, and unfiltered, not grieving missed moments but joking about them, not expressing guilt but satisfaction. There is even talk that he laughs about avoiding school meetings simply because he didn't want to encounter David, the man who has become a stable presence in Truly's daily life. That reaction reframes everything. It wasn't obligation keeping him away, it was ego. Hearing something like that doesn't just hurt, it rewires how a child understands their parent. Truly isn't naive. She's watched her family fracture in real time. She's seen tears, arguments, and promises that never turned into action. She's seen her father demand loyalty while offering inconsistency. And now, if these reports are true, she's heard confirmation that her absence wasn't mourned, it was convenient. That realization is a turning point. This is the moment where confusion turns into clarity, where self-doubt gives way to understanding. She wasn't asking for too much, she wasn't being difficult, she wasn't the reason he stayed away. The problem was never her. And once that truth settles in, there's no going back to believing the story he's been telling. Cody's control has always relied on ambiguity. As long as everything stayed vague, he could reshape events, rewrite motivations, and shift blame. But a recording doesn't forget. It doesn't soften over time. It doesn't adjust its tone to protect feelings. It simply exists. And that's why this moment feels so dangerous for him. Because for the first time, the version of events doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who stayed quiet long enough to capture the truth. This is why the reaction behind the scenes is reportedly so tense. Because once something like this exists, it can't be managed with speeches or spun away with emotion. A man can argue with people. He can argue with memories. He cannot argue with his own voice. And that reality seems to be exactly what has triggered the panic now surrounding Cody. According to the chatter, the fear isn't about guilt, it's about exposure. Control has always been his strongest weapon, and this recording threatens to take it away. If it ever surfaces, it doesn't just challenge his public image, it dismantles it. Years of carefully framed confessionals and self-pity collapse the moment his private words contradict them. That's why legal whispers are growing louder, not as an act of innocence, but as a sign of desperation. When someone starts talking about silencing a child rather than explaining themselves, it reveals more than any statement ever could. A father with nothing to hide doesn't search for ways to bury evidence, he faces it. What makes this situation even more unsettling is what it represents for the rest of the family. This isn't only Truly's story, it's a missing puzzle piece for siblings who spent years questioning their own experiences. Forgotten birthdays, missed surgeries, emotional distance, all of it suddenly makes sense. The problem was never miscommunication, it was priority.
And in that context, Truly's role becomes almost symbolic. The child who was once overlooked becomes the one holding clarity, not through confrontation, not through shouting, but through quiet awareness. She didn't go looking for revenge, she went looking for truth. Whether that audio is ever released or not, the balance has already shifted. Cody no longer controls the narrative alone. The version of reality he depended on has fractured, and the cracks are visible. His authority, once unquestioned, now hangs on a thread pulled tight by his own words. This isn't just about a missed visit or a fake excuse. It's about a child realizing her worth doesn't depend on someone else's availability. It's about recognizing when love is conditional and deciding not to carry the blame for it anymore. And that's the part no storyline can undo.